Hello everybody, welcome back to Box Checked. Here we have a 2013 Jeep Patriot. This is a limited edition four-wheel drive. And what we're going to be addressing is a coolant leak on the Patriot. And this coolant leak is right here. It's at this rigid plastic portion of this filler neck. Actually a little bit hard to find. It must be just a tiny little crack, but nonetheless, over time this thing has lost some fluid. But this particular part is in the shape of a T-fitting, and it has two large hoses that are fixed on both sides, as well as a smaller hose where the fluid can go to and from the coolant reservoir. And the part we're going to be replacing this with is an AC Delco brand upper radiator hose. Now I got this one from partsgeek.com, and it was a perfect fitment, and it actually fixed the leak, so no complaints here. So I will be putting a link of that in the description if you need that. Now, the reason that we're replacing the filler neck and upper radiator hoses is this is technically one assembly. If you look really closely, you can see that the hoses are fixed on the Patriot's filler neck, as well as this one that we're about to replace it with, this AC Delco one. So I'm going to walk you through the steps in replacing this part to fix this coolant leak. Now, to start with, both of these hose ends, there's one that goes to the radiator and there's another one that goes and connects into the engine. They both have spring tensioned clamps. And in order to access these, there's a few different parts we need to get out of the way, and in particular on the driver's side. So we're going to start by removing this plastic air duct. It's just above the battery. There's two tabs. You just turn them 90 degrees to the left and you can pop it out. And that's going to give you access to the battery. And that's the next thing we're going to remove. And what I'm going to use is a 10mm socket to loosen the battery leads. And once I get both of those battery leads loosened, I'll just pull the battery all the way out. And I'm pulling it all the way out because you need all the space you can get freed up so you can get those clamps on and off. Now we're going to use a 10mm socket to remove the bracket holding the air duct box, the one that has a computer on top of it, and it's connected into the body of the engine compartment. And I'm sorry this is out of frame, and you'll see which bolt I'm talking. It's just one bolt. But you'll see it later when we put things back together. There's a better shot of that. Now we're going to use a 5/16 size socket to loosen the air duct connection band. Whenever this is loose enough, we can disconnect that air duct from the box. Now the bottom of the air box has a few different snap-in style pins. So now that we have the bracket disconnected and the air duct connected, we can actually just pull this thing straight up. And you're going to feel it unsnap. And once that unsnaps from its position, you can then just kind of raise it up and lean it over the engine cover. Now, I didn't disconnect any electrical on this. I left all the electrical in place, just left it laying on top of the engine cover, and that really gives you enough room to do this job, and you can just put everything right back. Now we're ready to start disconnecting some of these hoses. Now, the hose on the driver's side, it's located right over the engine to the transmission, that section right there, and there's just no way that I can catch fluid from here if I have to disconnect this one first. So I'm actually going to start on the passenger side first, and I've got a drain pan under the vehicle, and I feel like if I disconnect it from here, I can get most of the fluid. So I disconnected the smaller hose first, and this is the easiest part about the job probably. Then I'm going to use a pair of channel lock pliers to compress the spring clamp on the larger hose. And once I get that compressed, and with the help of a flathead screwdriver, I was able to walk that clamp back and over that neck. Now don't be fooled by the video editing here. It took me about 10 minutes to finally get that thing walked over. Now, after my edited experience with the extremely stubborn spring clamp on the passenger side, I used a 10mm to remove the filler neck bracket bolt. And once this bolt is removed and that bracket's able to kind of come off, you're able to flex the hose up and down quite a bit. And this is really going to help you out when you actually disconnect the hose in terms of draining the fluid out. Okay, so now that I have that passenger side clamp disengaged and the bracket loose, now I'm going to work the hose off of the neck. Now, just a side note, if you notice, my coolant reservoir, it was already empty in this case. It had already leaked out. So if yours is not empty, it's probably a good idea just to go ahead and siphon some of that out, or you can use that smaller hose and just drain it out separately. And that way, whenever you disconnect the larger hose, it's going to limit how much gushes out. And thankfully, the drain pan caught most of the fluid here. Now we're going to move over to the driver's side, and there's just much more freedom to work over here. The clamp is a lot easier to manipulate and get walked back off. Didn't really have to do a great deal of video editing on this one. I did have to use a flathead screwdriver though to just kind of push it, between like where the front edge of the hose meets that neck, just to kind of break that seal. But after just a little bit of work and twisting back and forth, I was able to get this one loose. There will be some remaining fluid which spills out onto your transmission. It's not a big deal. What I did was I just rinsed it off with a little fresh water, and you're good to go. Just try not to soak your electrical connections too bad. Okay, now that we have the old hose assembly removed, it's time to transfer the bracket and the clamps from the old to the new one. So I'm going to use the same channel lock pliers I've been using. I'm going to pinch both locking tabs in on the bracket, and then you can just wiggle that bracket out. And once this is out, I'm going to orient the old hose and the new hose where I know that things are going to go on the same way. And this bracket, it's easy, it just snaps into place. After I get that bracket in place, I'm going to transfer the spring clamps from the old hose over to the new one. And whenever you're doing this, just try to visualize that you're putting this thing back in, and which position do you need to have the tabs on the bracket, just to make that installation as easy as possible. If you can get this thing positioned correctly, it's really going to be a game changer, because those spring clamps can be just a real pain. And with that, we're ready to put this thing back on at this point. And the first thing I did was, just to confirm it has good fitment, I went ahead and just put the hose over the attachment points, the one to the radiator and the one to the engine, just to confirm that everything's going to fit well, and it does. And now what I'm going to do is attach that bracket. I'm going to attach that 10mm bolt that we removed to get that secured in place. And now for the dreaded part, these spring clamps. So I'm going to start with the passenger side on this one. Again, this is the harder side. Just a little note about these spring clamps, and in particular, this side of the vehicle, there's just not a lot of room to work over here in terms of being able to squeeze the pliers, because essentially you're making a fist when you squeeze the pliers. And once you make that fist, it's really hard to manipulate the clamp after that point. Additionally, some clamps are made to lock back into place. There's like a little tab that'll lock it, and that helps with installation. But I couldn't get either one of these to actually lock into place so I could do that. So I'm having to rely on other methods and tools to help me on this. And eventually what I did was I used a zip tie to take the place of my hand grip. I got the clamp compressed, and I zip tied the handles of the pliers. And once I did that, I could back my hand out a little bit and actually use my hand to try to walk the clamp instead of focusing on, squeezing the handles. But between this and a flat head on the back side of the clamp, I was finally able to get this one walked on. Again, this was another 10-minute one, which thankfully video editing spared you of. Now that's the hardest part about this, is getting that back on. And once this is connected, we can move on to the easiest one, and that's the smaller hose coming from the reservoir. Now that we're done with the passenger side, we're going to move over to the driver's side. Again, this is just an easier side because there's more room to work. And I apologize, I blocked most of this shot with my arm, but I'm just going to zoom in and give you a visual of what this looks like after the clamp is installed over the neck. And we're good to go. We're done with the hose, fixing the hose in place. So now we can lower that air box with the computer on it back down into position. And once you get this thing positioned where you feel the pins line up with the receivers, just push down on the box to get it to snap in place. Once it's snapped into place, I'm going to use a 10mm to reattach that bracket to the frame. And this is that better shot I was telling you about, so you can see which bolt that I'm manipulating here that connects that bracket to the frame. And once you get that bracket connected, now we're going to move over and reconnect the air duct to the box. And we're going to use that 5/16 to retighten that clamp. And after all this is complete, we're going to reinstall the battery. Again, reiterating here that was a 10mm to get these leads connected. And then we're going to reinstall that air duct that goes over the battery. And the job's almost done at this point. Now all it's left to do is refill the system with fluid. And what I'm going to use here is, this is a Mopar concentrate in this shot, but later on, I'm going to put some distilled water in there just to get that mixture correct where it needs to be. Okay, and with that being said, box checked on this one. That project's done. That hose was a perfect fitment, and it did fix the leak. So my theory was correct that there was a tiny little crack in that rigid plastic portion. But that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully somebody out there finds it helpful. Guys, as always, thank you for watching.